Welcome back to another edition of the Single Point, a division of the Rouge Radio podcast powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. My name is Robert Dalton, and we are in the midst of our 9 teams in 9 weeks, and this week we focus on the guys in green, and for that we bring in to the voice of the Saskatchewan RoughRiders, the new voice, Mr. Derek Taylor. Derek, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
It's funny because the last time that we had you on, I believe it was like Grey Cup 2017, and I think we had just caught you outside of giving the what you termed as the worst high five to Farhan Laji, and now I'm catching you on the road to Saskatoon on the way to Riders practice. So first off, congratulations on getting a new gig, because not only are you the new voice of the Riders, but since you are the voice of the Riders, you are now God. So if you could just... So, I mean, was it just a matter of, you just, there was an opening, you applied for it, did they reach out to you? How did that how did that all unfold?
Well, I've known for the longest time, since, high school, that I wanted to do play-by-play, right? And, in the last few years, I've super fell in love with football. I mean, you kind of have to watch every game and every play all the time. So this opportunity came around in January. I thought, okay, this is very interesting. I'd be intrigued on its face because, man, it is the most beloved CFL franchise. I don't know that it's particularly close between it and number 2. And then my wife had been working in Saskatoon for the last 2.5 years. So I was in Toronto, she was in Saskatoon, and we looked at that and went, oh, wow, we could live in the same place. Ooh, that's intriguing. So as hard as it was to leave TSN, the job I dreamed of as a kid, the landing was so much softer coming to an opportunity like this, both professionally and for my home life.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you're on the Sports Center, you did reference Winnipeg as the best city in Canada. So, are you going to have to stop doing that now that you're the voice of the rivals?
I did. So yeah, I would always, Canada's most beautiful city, Winnipeg. I did on an early episode of my daily radio show start off an interview by saying, now we all know Winnipeg is a giant dump hole. So with that, because, loyalties can change. I can be bought, right? So I've been bought by the province of Saskatchewan. So the city of Winnipeg, I'm not going to be as proclaiming my love for it as frequently, let's say that.
Hey, well, you're talking to a fellow Pegger. That's my job, I guess, on this team. So, day one of training camp happened today, and now you're on the road to Saskatoon. I guess you haven't really saw up close, but how has the Riders looked so far, day one of training camp?
Well, there's some questions to be answered in the off season. I've been following along with Luke Mullender, my color guy, because he wanted to be at camp. He was there 15 minutes early, sitting cross-legged, ready for class to begin because he was so excited. There were a few questions, like what was the status of Dan Clark, who was in that horrible single vehicle crash? So apparently Dan wasn't on the field, but based on his season last year, the numbers I have on Dan, I mean, a guy who allowed 4 quarterback pressures over an entire season, he's got to be their option at center when he's back and ready to go. We're curious about how it's going to play out at receiver because the Riders figured they must have figured we need receivers because they took one 6th and 15th overall in the draft in Justin McInnes and Braden Lenius. So that's a big priority for them. Both those guys ended up straining their hamstring on day number 1. So auspicious beginning for the two of them. We need to go, they're going to go at American receiver. How will they work with Naaman Roosevelt and Manny Arsenault? Manny, we weren't 100% sure, obviously off the ACL, right? Didn't know, would he be out there? No, he was out there, with the regular gang, not injured, ready to go for training camp. So that was great. And then what we'll see as training camp evolves is what's going to happen with this defense, because it's not a Chris Jones defense, though it has all that talent, and we believe all that flexible talent. Will Jason Shivers do them the same as Chris Jones did and give teams multiple looks and change it on the fly during the season? So lots of things we can dive down on.
You talked about the draft picks because, in my opinion, I mean, not that they were horrible picks, but Chris Jones, it seemed like Chris Jones didn't really take the Canadian draft as serious as he did, and this is kind of like a new O'Day, I guess someone on Twitter used that pun.
Nice.
Jeremy O'Day, I guess the sky's the limit with potential, but are these two receivers, and then most notably the guys that you mentioned, are these guys day one starters, or are these long-term projects?
It did seem like Jones was trying to hit home runs, right, as opposed to going for safer picks. At least in this first draft, it would seem O'Day went a little bit safer. McInnes, the first round pick, number 6 overall, had a couple of mini camps he went to, Indianapolis and Tennessee. But I think maybe they had a feel that he was going to end up and be able to sign this year. So taking a shot at him, and then Braden Lenny's in the second round, I think it was always kind of determined that he would be coming. I don't know if I would think over time they expect them both to be starters. When we heard O'Day talk about Braden Lenny, the second rounder out of New Mexico, he said a lot of things that made you think, oh, that's the kind of stuff that Patrick LeBlanc does. Interesting. So if he thinks that Lennius is down the road a replacement for LeBlanc, or if Lennius could somehow ball out immediately, could he right off the bat be that third guy in from the field side who does so many things with the blocking and the short running, short pattern running, and great hands, and all, working all those hybrid skills, H-back stuff. Maybe he would have a shot. I'm curious what they think of McInnes, if they'll just immediately cast him out as that field wide receiver spot, because they do return, from boundary to field, Shaq Evans, Naaman Roosevelt, Patrick LeBlanc, Kyron Moore, and Katie Cannon was the starter late in the season at that field wide receiver spot. I think if they had McInnes as a viable, at least early on in his career, field wide receiver, that gives them a little extra flexibility on both sides of the ball with the ratio. So I think maybe, just from talking to folks, maybe that's what they'll investigate early on. But if you had a Canadian that could start at one of the prime receiving spots, and McInnes, big body, 6'5", they list him at 210. If you had a big body guy who can do things, I don't know, and I haven't seen McInnes live yet, but if he could do some Darvin Adams things to relate it to Winnipeg fans, then I think they'd be very pleased with that.
Let's go back, because we talked about Chris Jones going down south. What will Jason Shivers? We've always heard the term defense wins championships. Can the Rider, because I felt they almost had a chance to win with last year's defense alone, with the guys that they've lost, can the Riders win the Grey Cup on this D alone? Not last year's D, but this D alone.
Oh, this defense, to me, is even better than last year's defense, right? To add Solomon Elamimian in the middle, and interested to see, what will they do with him? Will he be the Mac? Will he be the Will? Where's he going to play? That to me is an upgrade. Crazy to say. And then if you replace last year, it was by the end Mikhail Brooks at tackle and Willie Jefferson at end. You replace them with Micah Johnson at tackle and A.C. Leonard at defensive end. To me, position, it's obviously not an upgrade at defensive end alone, but those two in combination, I think they've actually improved their defensive line among the starters. So I honestly feel like their defense is better than last year's. You get a year extra for the young kids across, some of the young kids across the back. Lucius Purifoy, that field halfback spot, gets another. He's had half a season in Saskatchewan. Now he gets a full season to play. Cresden Butler presumably will take over that field cornerback spot full time after doing some sharing with Javon Johnson. So I think the defense is even better. I really, in the deep depths of my heart, do not believe the axiom that defense wins championships, but it sure doesn't hurt. I wouldn't kick a defense out of bed for eating crackers, if you know what I mean.
All right, so you answered you answered my next question, but I'm just going to ask it anyway, because you said that this
you're going to ask me if I'd kick a defense out of bed for eating crackers. Is that what you're going to ask me?
Well, I wish. I'll save that question when we have Chris Cuthbert on sometime soon. But
yes,
as I mentioned, last year's defense was dominant in all kinds of ways. So who will the Riders miss more, Chris Jones, Willie Jefferson, or Toby Antigua? So I had to ask that question, but you're saying they're not going to miss any of them.
Honestly, it's probably Chris Jones. And we just don't know about Jason Shivers. He might be better than Chris Jones. He might be worse than Chris Jones. He might be exactly Chris Jones, but we just don't know. But we have a great deal of evidence of what Chris Jones can do in this league, and last season we got a great deal of evidence of what Chris Jones could do on the fly. They were a standard back five, and then all of a sudden they get torched by two small boundary wide receivers in consecutive weeks. And he goes, all right, book it. We're going to matchups across the board. And Ed, you're going to take the most important guy. So for, I think it was consecutive weeks, it was Brandon Banks, Kamar Jordan, and Darrell Walker he had to cover. And you go, okay, no other team that I can remember really went to matchups so strictly as Saskatchewan did. So honestly, Chris Jones, I think, is the one they're going to miss, because the other two guys, though, you don't really replace Willie Jefferson. You slide back a bit with AC Jefferson, but that money, AC Leonard, but that money you didn't give to Willie, you gave to Micah Johnson, who for my money is the best in the league. So, there have been replacements in other spots, though maybe not entirely their equal.
Awesome. Now let's focus to the big position at quarterback. What's the outlook at the quarterback position? Because you have been referred to as the lone person on Colaros Island, but he didn't have remotely close to what he would call what he would even call a successful season. Brandon Bridge is out there, or he's gone. So it's just pretty much Zach Colaros with Cody Fajardo.
Cody Fajardo.
Yeah. So what's the outlook of the quarterback? I mean, I hate to say this because of his health concerns, but I mean, could we possibly see Cody starting sometime in October?
Well, if the league keeps letting people hit Zach Colaros in the head, which nobody wants, then anything is possible, right? Cody could end up starting before too long. Here's the thing. When I look around the league, there are three quarterbacks I've seen hit the heights, like the highest heights of play, like Bo Levi Mitchell, Mike Riley, and 2015 Zach Colaros was unbelievable. Like, as I wrote in the piece for TSN back in the day, if you rated out his numbers and gave him a little bump because competition would have declined late in the season, he would have finished that year with something like 41 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. And those are numbers that no one had put up. Like, that was Casey Printers in his one MVP season when he was the next great thing at quarterback, didn't even touch numbers like that. Like, Zach was unbelievable before he hurt his knee. So we've seen those heights. So I am firmly on Colaros Island, where the water is warm and inviting, because we've seen what he can do. Name me another quarterback in the league that we've seen hit those heights. It's not Trevor Harris. It's not Matt Nichols. Jeremiah Masoli did some great things, but still led the league in interceptions, and then combined interceptions and fumbles was the league leader in quarterback turnovers. So Zach's shown us he can be that. Now, what it takes to get that out of him is great protection, great receivers, great offensive coordinator, and time to do his thing. There's still things that in his statistics that make you go, yes, this guy still has some elite aspects to his game. He's still very accurate. He's the best quarterback at, when pressure is on him, at not giving up sacks. He's more escapable than any quarterback in the league. So it's still there. But, I mean, we've seen it in a dozen cases every year. Like, is this the coach for the player? Is this the scheme for the player? Is this the player for the scheme? We'll have to see. But I firmly believe, because we've seen it before, that Zach can hit those heights again.
So the last question before I get to another one, before we get to your prediction, because you're on the road and I hate to see something happen to you while you're answering my questions. Let's focus back on Colaros. Are we trying too much to hope that the 2015 Zach Colaros version, or I guess the question is, what's more likely to happen, last year's Zach Colaros or the 2015 Colaros?
Well, and that's a very good point. Like, 2015 for me, and I freely admitted this many times, 2015 was the first year I started charting the CFL, and that was when Zach was at his absolute zenith, right? So that version of Zach is still stuck in my mind. So you watch 2016 Zach when he came back from injury, and it did not go well. And you watch 2017 Zach in those 0-8 start, and you go, well, it wasn't Zach because their two tackles were terrible and they had nothing going on offensively. They refused to use C.J. Gable and and Brandon Banks wasn't a thing yet. And then once they go 0-8, June Jones takes over. He says Jeremiah is the starter. The tackle problem had been fixed, and Brandon Banks became a CFL superstar on offense, not just special teams. So, you can make excuses, and I absolutely will make those excuses for Zach, and that's if that's a failing, I will 100% cop to it. Because last year, you can't look at 9 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and then I believe it was also 5 dropped interceptions. So it's like an adjusted touchdown to interception ratio of 0.5, and think that this is a sure thing by any stretch. It's honestly, if I'm going to be honest with myself, it's probably a little more hope-based than true belief-based. But I want it to be true because just 2015, Zach, 1, meant a ton in my career, and 2, was so much fun to watch.
Oh.
So you're right, and that's probably more based on hope than anything else.
Definitely. There's nothing more that I want to see is a healthy Zach Larles put up those god-awful numbers. I shouldn't say god-awful, but they were just god-like numbers.
Ungodly. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the way. There we go. Before we get your prediction, there's one thing that a lot of people have been asking, and you pretty much have probably answered this question for you. Are you still going to be the stats guru, detailing everything, being that guy that we've come to know in years past?
I absolutely want to be. The difference between my new job as the voice of the Riders and my old job doing Sports Center is just the amount of time, right? So I'm in the process of recruiting folks to help me collect the data, because that's the part where, I would go home after work and spend 5 hours crushing each game to get out, all the little parts of it, which made me sound smart when I parroted them on the air. So yes, I absolutely want to, because honestly, that I think was the big part of why people have any idea who I am, and honestly why I got the job that I have. So it's just so valuable for conversations with football people. I was talking to Manny Arsenault at practice, and we're back and forth, and I feel like I can, 1, contribute to a conversation like that, and 2, for listeners, get a better answer from people with things like that. I could speak intelligently about offensive lines across the league. If we compared kicking games across the league. Okay, well, here we go. I can rank them 9-1 based on what I believe, and just engage people who know, who played the game and thus know even better than I do. We can get more and better information from them, which is what, as fans, we really want. So I absolutely am going to do my 100% best. Where I'll display it, besides my radio show and the broadcast on the Rough Rider Football Network, is still to be seen.
Now you realize that you're going to raise the bar of CFL play-by-play guys. I just can't imagine Bob Irving spending 6 hours a day doing stats like you do. He's got the eye test, but I can't imagine he putting in the footwork that you do. Everybody's got different skills, right? Like mine is I can sit in front of a computer for 10 hours and grind out, okay, if they were under pressure, but not under pressure, but out of the pocket, what was their passer rate? And I can go down endless rabbit hole. Adjusted catch ratio divided by, I can go forever. So we all have our skills. Bob's got 45 years of being amazing at his job too, that he doesn't necessarily need to dive down to the same thing. But at the same time, to be fair, and it's something I'm very conscious of, I could bore people to death with numbers, right? Because not everybody loves them in the same way that I do. So it's something I'll be very conscientious of as we do our broadcast. And it's going to take a while for me to get that mixture just right. Football Corsi, I could just see it right now. Derek,
can you imagine?
Before we let you go, where do you see the Riders finishing in the West this year?
I was just having a conversation with some folks, and the only team I feel like I have a bit of a handle on in the West is Edmonton, and I feel like they're a 3-4. The Riders, I've seen them pick 5th, and I can't imagine that being the case because the defense is looks so intimidating. But they're not going to get 14 turnover and return touchdowns this season, defensive and return touchdowns this season, because that's the CFL record for a reason. It's not going to be hit every time. Honestly, to me, they're more. You know what? I'd have to say they finished 3rd. If I'm going to make a prediction, I'd have to say they finished 3rd. I feel like Winnipeg's going to find some stuff and finish 2nd. And as much as Calgary keeps losing talent, and they lose, 11 starters and 6 off that defense, and their 4 best defensive players, they just keep doing it to us. So I don't want to be the one who says for 2 years in a row Calgary's going to split back. So I feel like Saskatchewan is 3 because Winnipeg at least has some more offense, though less defense, and Calgary is Calgary.
Definitely, and just right there.
Although that doesn't leaving BC out of the mix, though. But BC's roster isn't particularly good outside a quarterback and a receiver and a half. So the West is a big puzzle for me this year. Wow.
And for the record, and I'll vouch for you here, Derek, because the last time that we had you on during our 9 teams, it was 2 years ago. You had predicted the Toronto Argonauts to finish 5-13, and I think the couple days after that they added S.J. Green and they went on to win the Grey Cup. So for any Rider fans listening, there's some issues here. So you might
That's
like
right.
this.
I immediately wanted the do-over, didn't I, when we saw the S.J. Green signing?
Yeah.
They were bereft at receiver and S.J. Green makes that a whole different case. Wow, that's right.
So in a
Yeah.
span of 5 seconds, I've just managed to get to calm Rider Nation down. It's like, what do you mean? He's the voice of the Riders. He picked us the third. Oh wait, okay, they're going to win the cup. That's it. All right, great.
Yeah. And I nailed that Winnipeg Saskatchewan Grey Cup last year. I nailed that one. Oops. Yep.
Well, at least
for that one.
At least they met in the playoffs. You kind of
Exactly.
saw the future there. Derek, thanks a lot for coming on. I know it's not late, but anytime that we record, it's late enough for anybody to come on. We definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.